Are there certain aspects of your life that you neglect or barely put any effort into? Do you wish certain areas of your life were different? Are you putting effort into an area of your life and feel like you're just not getting the results that you wished for? Today, I want to discuss the importance of getting dialed in on the areas of your life that matter most to you. By doing so, we can allocate time and energy into it so that we can make change moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's the Bearded Man Podcast with your favorite, the world's favorite bearded man, Bob Bay. Each week on these solo podcasts, I try to share some insight on topics to help you become the best version of yourself. Do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. This is just my bearded wisdom that I hope brings value to you. If you enjoy this episode at any moment in time, please screenshot this episode on whatever platform you are listening in on, post it to your IG story, tag me at Bob-A, that's B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's and a Y. Share out the podcast on your IG story. Let me know what the biggest takeaway was. Tell your friends, tell your family. They got to tune into the Bearded Man Podcast. And ultimately, just sharing it out helps so much. So please do so today if you enjoy this episode. Thank you very much. Get dialed in. Dialed in was not necessarily part of my vocabulary until moving to Venice. So really just the beginning of 2021. I wish I could give credit to how it became part of my daily affirmations routine, but it kind of just happened. And when I say daily affirmations routine, I don't actually mean that I have a list that I recite to myself. And I'm not opposed to that idea because it'll definitely put your headspace on the right track and give you good intention going into the day ahead. I just have a handful of phrases that I tend to use every day that get me fired up and they keep me inspired to continue doing the work. Some examples would be, get dialed in, put in the hours and stay passionate, focus on 24 hours at a time, or just simply get after it. It's great to find inspiration from external things like people we follow on social media or places, or pieces of content that, we consume. But it's really powerful when you can find tricks, tactics, words to create the fire within you. That's when you know you're cooking with gas, when you can create everything internal. If you follow me on IG, you see me post about getting dialed in on almost every area of my life, from going out on my morning runs to going out with the boys on the weekend, early mornings, doing my creative work, figuring out, clean and healthy groceries for the week ahead. I document it not because I think I'm some hot boy, but because it's part of my brand of showing you guys and gals the process of putting in the work in real time. Now, getting dialed in is a lifestyle. It's about going all in on whatever is in front of you right now in this very moment. It doesn't matter if it's you getting ready for the date, sending the cold email to someone you want to connect with, calling your family and checking in with them or whatever. But how does one get dialed in? By cutting out all distractions, by focusing on the present moment of what is in front of us right now, instead of thinking about what happened yesterday or what needs to get done tomorrow or next week. It allows us to get into our flow so that we can dial in on whatever we are working on. Now, there have been times in the past where I neglected certain areas of my life, whether it was saying yes to new experiences, throwing myself out there in the dating world, friendships, etc. Now I'm in a place in my life where I'm trying my best to spread myself evenly across. Now, you heard me say it a couple times, but keyword here is trying. Sometimes I slip, but when I do, I just get back up and I continue to do my best. And yes, some areas of my life may not get all the attention. Others will get more attention, more energy than others, and that's fine. You can spread yourself however across that you feel is best for you. But the key here is every bucket is a work in progress. I also recognize that if one area isn't making as much progress as I'd like it to, I can commit more energy into it and get more dialed in on it. Do you possess the ability to get dialed in is probably the $1,000,000 question going into today's episode. You're probably asking yourself, is this a magic formula or some secret sauce that only the bearded man has access to? Absolutely not. We all possess the ability within us. It's just a flip of a switch in our mind. In today's podcast, I hope to help each and every one of you get more dialed in on the areas of your life that matter most to you. Let me emphasize that again. The area of your life that matters most to you. Every season of our life, certain buckets will be more important than others, and that's okay. There is no right or wrong because we decide what is most important. Once we have an understanding of our priorities, it's time to get dialed in on them. So how to get dialed in? Step number 1, recognize what needs to be worked on. Self-awareness is not only the first step to reaching our inner potential, but it's most definitely the first step in getting dialed in. Like I was just saying before, we're all going through different seasons in our life, and so what is most important to us changes from time to time. And regardless of what season you are going through right now, or what I'm going through, the best thing that we can do is prioritize the buckets of our life that need to be worked on the most. So when we acknowledge the areas that need the most work, we can make sure that they take priority over the other ones. It allows us to, lock in days of the week or times of the day when we are 110% committed to getting dialed in on that aspect of our life. And by doing that, we're binding ourselves into a contract to put in the work on whatever that aspect of our life needs to be worked on. So for example, in last week's solo podcast, I talked about how dating takes effort and how, that was an area of my life that I was trying to put more effort into. That first step of acknowledging, hey, this area of my life has been neglected for far, far too long. I think it's time we give it some love. Sound good? Now, it's very easy to beat ourselves up and be disappointed and angry that X area of our life is not where we'd like it to be, but doing so gets us nowhere. If anything, doing that makes us anxious, angry, and frustrated that it then almost becomes impossible to make any progress because we have the wrong emotions running through our body. Instead, we should get more excited to recognize that this X area of our life needs to be worked on, that we will make progress on it because we've taken a moment to recognize that it needs to be worked on. Ask yourself today, what areas of my life do I prioritize more than others? Am I happy with that? Should I instead reprioritize some areas over others? I can't tell you what is right or what is wrong. That is solely up to you. And it's about being aware of what matters most to you in this very moment. Once we get aligned on what needs to be worked on, we then begin to dial in on it. So step number 1 to getting dialed in, we must recognize what areas of our life need to be worked on. Without doing that, we won't make any progress because it's not a priority to us. Step number 2, lock in time and go all in. Now, the first step is the hardest because we have to investigate ourselves. We need to be honest about what are our top priorities and if we are happy with them. Now that we have a better grip of what buckets of our life are most important and we've scheduled time during the day, the week, or the month to work on them, we can truly dial in on it. Now, once it's time to put in the work, go all in. That's how it needs to be when we are focusing on our passion project, our career, our dating life, our fitness lifestyle. There is no time to mess around and get distracted. There is no time to half-ass it because we know we'll see it in the results. Because, we won't have the results we're looking for. The only option we have got is to get dialed in and to do the actual work, period. So, for example, 6:30 a.m. during the week is my time to get dialed in on running. Monday mornings at 8 a.m. is my time to get dialed on recording these solo podcasts. Thursday or Friday nights are my chance to get dialed in on dating. The weekends are for me to get dialed in on community building. The only way I've been able to break up these buckets of my life and assigned days of the week and times to them to work on them is because I took the first step to recognize what needs to be worked on. From there, it is a matter of consistently putting time and energy into that area of my life while also having some patience and to let the progress work itself out. When it's time for me to go on that morning run, I'm not thinking about anything else except that run. When it's time to work on these solo pod topics in the early mornings, my focus is all in on trying to make sure that every second of this podcast is valuable. When I'm shooting shots on the weekends in the LA dating scene, my mind isn't thinking about the podcast guest that's coming through next week. That would not be good. When we lock in time and truthfully go all in on whatever area of our life is the priority in this moment, we can effectively and efficiently put in the necessary work. If we don't, and we instead bullshit ourselves, we scroll on IG, we answer texts, we read emails, we catch up with an old friend, how do we ever expect to make progress? If we're honest with ourselves and we're going 110% all in on what is in front of us right now, we won't get caught up in the results because we know that putting in the work is the win. So as long as we consistently put in the work, the results will follow. There is no question about it. So step number 2 to getting dialed in. We must lock in time in our day, our week, or month so that we can commit effort into bettering this aspect of our life. Once that time comes, we must cut out all distractions and go all in on it. Step number 3, assess progress and make adjustments. The last step in getting dialed in is constantly assessing progress and making adjustments when necessary. As I said many times on this podcast, there is no progress without effort. Let's say it again, right, guys and ladies? There is no progress without effort. And even if we are putting in the effort, progress doesn't happen overnight, but more so over a long period of time. At this point, we've recognized the areas of our life that are our priority. We've hopefully found time during the day, the week, or the month to work on it. And now it's just a game of making tweaks and changes when necessary. So how do we assess that progress? We ask ourselves, if we're in a better position today than where we were when we started. Even if we're not where we exactly would like to be, we need to pat ourselves on the back for at least stepping up to the plate to put in the effort. Getting dialed in is not about getting the result. It's actually about being able to show up to do the work. So long as you're doing that, you are dialed in. Doing the work is being dialed in. How do we make adjustments? We ask ourselves, is there any other tactics or strategies that we should give a try? Change up the time of day, the day of week to do X thing, change up the way we approach it, etc. If we like the path we're headed down, if we're enjoying the process, then maybe don't change anything and stick to what is working. I love the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. For me, I'm constantly assessing progress on both these guests and solo podcasts that I put out weekly. It helps me keep tab in real time of how am I doing, and it allows me to reflect on what is and isn't working in my belief and based on the feedback that I get from you beautiful ladies and gentlemen. I make adjustments week over week, and most of the time they're so minor that if there is any adjustments, most people wouldn't even notice. I like the flow of these solo podcasts, and I really do enjoy the conversations with the guests, so therefore I just continue to stick with it. So step number 3 to getting dialed in. We must assess progress and make adjustments when necessary. If things are running smoothly and we feel good about where we are headed, there's no need to change anything. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. To recap, getting dialed in is about choosing an area of our life and when to focus in on it. By doing so, we can make sure to not neglect anything that is a priority to us. It's not about getting the result. It's actually about being able to show up to do the work. We're all going through different seasons in our life, so what is a priority to you might not be a priority to someone else, and that's okay. There is no right or wrong. It is our choice. 3 steps to getting dialed in. Step number 1, we must recognize what area of our life needs to be worked on. Without doing that, we won't make any progress because it's not a priority to us. Step number 2, we must lock in time in our day, week, or month so that we can commit effort into bettering this aspect of our life. Once that time comes, we must cut out all distractions and go all in on it. Step number 3, we must assess progress and make adjustments when necessary. If things are running smoothly and we feel good about where we are headed, there's no need to change anything. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Challenge for the listeners. Take a few minutes today. Open up the Notes app on your phone and prioritize what areas of your life are most important to you right now. Do it right now. Pull it down notes app and write this out. After that, find time during the week where you can commit to this area of your life. Stick with it for some time, assess the progress and make adjustments when necessary. Questions from the BMC. That is the Bearded Man community. If it's your first time listening to this podcast, welcome. You are now part of the community. It's a very exclusive community. It costs you $0, and just listening to this podcast means you're a part of it. So thank you very, very much. We had one question come in for this topic today from my man, Ben. He said, how do I balance dating or social life when I'm just starting my business? It's a great, great question, Ben. This is my 2 cents, my bearded hot take on this. Prioritize what matters most to you in this moment. I can't tell you how to balance it. That is something that you're going to have to test and try to figure out. For example, when I first started podcasting, my dating life and most of my social life went out the door. I knew the amount of work that it was going to take to get the project off the ground. So I went all in. See what works for you though. And just know that one of the three, the dating life, the social life, and the business, needs to be prioritized. One needs to be the first priority, second priority, and third priority. Once you understand that, what are the priorities, it's easier to make decisions when you're faced with choices. So I know on Mondays, when I'm recording these solo podcasts and I'm editing the podcast for next week, there is nothing that is going to come that is going to jump into my schedule that is going to stop me from editing these podcasts. So on Monday, my number one priority is podcasting. If you change it to Saturday, my number one priority is not podcasting. It's going to be if in this instance, if it's dating, social life, and my own career, it's going to be third priority. So I would assess it like that and be willing to make changes as necessary. I would also highly recommend reading the book Winning by Tim Grover. He's a former trainer for Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And I think this book will really help you because it really just defines on what winning is and what are the sacrifices that are necessary in order to become a winner. It's a great question, Ben, and I hope this was somewhat valuable to you. Pod review of the week. Every week, I share some love for somebody that took the time to leave a pod review on the iTunes podcast app. If you want to be the pod review of the week, go leave a review after listening to today's podcast. Let me know what you thought of the episode. But the pod review of the week is going to C. Sliwa 7. He put the title as amazing. Let's go. I'm already fired up. 5 out of 5 stars. Let's go. And the review said, decided to listen to this episode after going back and forth in the DMs with the bearded man himself, asking for some advice being a young podcaster trying to make my way into the game. Couldn't be more thankful for that conversation. Amazing episode, exactly what we talked about and what I need to hear to get myself going on the right path. C. Sliwa, I think your name is Chris, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just basing it off of obviously this iTunes review. First off, good, props to you for stepping up and sliding through the DM. I preach it on this podcast. Hey guys, if you got any questions, if you got any topics you'd like me to cover, slide through my DM, hit me up. And sometimes people don't do it, but this is a great example of somebody that did it, and we had a great conversation. And, it's really amazing to try to give that back. And, it was 5 years ago when I stepped into the podcast game, and now I've, still got a lot of room to grow, but I'm definitely in a different headspace and point in my life where this is the norm now. Like podcasting is like me making cereal and a coffee in the morning. It's just part of my life and it's non-negotiable. And it very much can be for my man Chris, and it can be for anyone out there that is trying to build that dream life and actually do the thing that they really want to do. So really appreciate you taking the time to listen to the podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time to, leave a pretty thoughtful review. And I hope you're enjoying these episodes. If anybody out there wants to be the pod review of the week, please head over to the iTunes podcast app and jot down your hot sense of what this podcast is doing to you. And I hope it's valuable. That's it. 105 already. Holy smokes. Also, let me give a quick little heads up. I did put out, before I fully wrap this podcast up, last week I put out on this podcast feed, it literally is a bonus episode for 3 minutes long of me explaining what it's about, but put out a bonus episode just talking about a survey that I just put out. If you scroll back on the podcast feed to the podcast called I Need Your Help, I put out a 4-question survey, and I'm trying to get as much feedback from you beautiful ladies and gentlemen on what you're thinking of the podcast thus far. It's just something I wanted to take the time after hitting 100 episodes and just getting a better idea of what you guys and gals are enjoying, what you want more of, how I can become a better podcaster, how I can make these podcasts more valuable. So if you have not yet already, please scroll back on the IG feed, not the IG feed, the podcast feed. Click on the description of the actual podcast title, I Need Your Help, and there's a link right there. If you can't access it or you can't find it, slide through my DM and I will happily send it to you. Anybody that takes the time to leave some feedback is greatly appreciated. Your names are not attached, so don't worry. I won't come looking for you. So be honest though, when you do these reviews, if you take the time, if you do the survey, please be honest and authentic. Don't fluff me up. Just tell me honestly how I can be better or what you're enjoying about the podcast. And it would be greatly appreciated. And matter of fact, I'm going to just put the description in. I'm going to put the survey in this link of this episode. So you don't even have to scroll back. Light bulb moment for the bearded man. If you guys and gals enjoyed this episode though, please screenshot this episode. You know the drill. Post it to your IG story. Tag me at Babe. That's B-O. 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y. Share out the podcast on your IG story. Tell the world what you're enjoying about this podcast. Let me know what the biggest takeaway was. And of course, if you have a topic you would like me to cover next, slide through my DM and let me know. I'm always looking for more topics, and I got plenty to talk about, but I would much rather curate to the listeners out there that are tuning into the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. That is episode 105, Get Dialed In, how to make change in any area of your life. It's the Bearded Man Podcast. See you.